I was motivated to make this video because I think we're doing a hell of a bad job about meeting people's existential needs, and gangs, mass murders, terrorism are all symptoms of that. And so I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents into this dialogue, and that's what this video is all about. Understanding destructiveness is related to being. Ideas toward a dialogue about reintegrating disillusioned terrorists into society. First of all, I'd like to say, what do I know about terrorism? Nothing. But I do know something about being, because I spent a good part of my life researching it. I just wanted to put my thoughts out there because I feel strongly we are doing a terrible job in helping people to unfold who they are and find places where they can be happy and constructive in society. We should be doing so much more in helping people come to know themselves and give the best that is in them to society. So here are some of my ideas. Reintegrating terrorists into society. There's an article on my website, theamericanreformmovement.com, Psychology of Terrorists, Experts Go to the Source, which is about the work of some researchers on terrorism. I have some thoughts about one of the issues raised. I have had these thoughts also when I've heard about mass murderers. I've also had these ideas about how we should be addressing the problem of the alienation of our youth. I offer them as part of the dialogue on reintegrating terrorists into society and how to curtail the destructiveness that comes from a loss of being. First, I'll talk a little bit about the source of my ideas. It's my research on my book, The Search for Being. I began my research on that book with a question: what is life all about? By the end of it, I had a conclusion. It was provided by Erich Fromm when he said, our existence should match our essence. I think that statement is our best hope for helping us to get our young people on the right path in life, and for helping those who have fallen off the right path to re-engage in a productive way with society. But first, let us look at some of the ideas of researchers in this article on terrorism. The article noted above, and I have all this on my website, the American Reform Movement, represents the work of terrorism scholars John Horgan and David Schanzer. The approach the terrorist scholars use is interviewing terrorists. Of them, John Horgan said of terrorists, they're motivated more by excitement, adventure, camaraderie, the chance to do something significant with their lives, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are radical in what they think. We tend to assume that if I enable you to have radical views or radical attitudes about a particular issue, whether it is about Islam or something else, that somehow means that you are at risk of becoming involved in terrorism. It is a myth. It seems to be intuitively plausible, but there's no real evidence to suggest that that's the case. There are far more people out there who are radicalized in thought and action than will ever become involved in terrorism. We're also finding examples of people who've engaged in terrorist activity who aren't necessarily radicalized. This reminded me of the chapter in my book, The Search for Being, the relationship between violence and being, the work of Erich Fromm on human destructiveness. Quote from my book: the amount of destructiveness to be found in individuals is proportionate to the amount to which expansiveness of life is curtailed, said Fromm. Destructiveness, he said, is the outcome of the unlived life. People are destructive, Fromm said, because conditions are not available for their growth. Dormant destructiveness, he tells us, is due to certain permanent conditions in a person's life like poverty, extreme boredom, impotence, and can break out abruptly. Perhaps the main theme that runs through all of Fromm's writing is the importance of freedom. Freedom, Fromm tells us, is the fundamental condition for any growth. The suppression of freedom, he says, is always accompanied by hatred. Our love of life is only nurtured, he said, when we do what is genuinely interesting. It's when we do what we love that we feel a surging sense of vitality. Then our actions come from the essence of who we are, and we actualize our individuality. From the article: Horgan stressed that preventing terrorism is incredibly difficult. He said societies should be more concerned with looking at how they can reintegrate terrorists and prevent re-engagement with terrorism before moving to de-radicalization programs. How do you reintegrate disillusioned terrorists into society? I think it's through the same means we could try to use to prevent terrorism. From the article, warned Horgan, we are going to face the issue very soon now in Europe and North America with potential returnees from the Syrian conflict. I don't think we've really begun to have serious discussions about what reintegration means. Certainly here in the United States, we're talking about no more than a dozen, maybe 24 at most, known Americans that have gone to Syria to fight with ISIS. But I don't think European countries have the luxury of simply locking everybody up. That's not to say that they're not going to have a difficult task on their hands. I think they are. They're going to have to be able to effectively discriminate between those fighters who are disillusioned and those who may actually pose a realistic threat upon reintegration. Schanzer suggested that policymakers might want to think about how to stimulate some exit points for these disillusioned people that are safe landings. If they have no alternative other than to go to jail or be stateless people, he said, they might see their best option as staying with the group. We need to show the same kind of creativity in counterterrorism that ISIS recruiters are using in attracting people in the first place, said Horgan. We certainly need to be able to find safe exit routes, safe methods of identifying disillusioned fighters who are willing to come back and say, hey, I went for these reasons, but the reality is very different. And those disillusioned ex-fighters may well be some of the best tools we have in terms of, if not preventing the flow to ISIS, at least stemming the tide of recruits that we're now seeing. I propose, and I invite others to offer their suggestions too. I invite a dialogue on how to be creative, as Horgan says. We must, on the reintegration of terrorists, have a sort of terrorist anonymous. I think ideas from my proposals also hold the key for solving problems of our alienated youth gangs on our streets, for preventing mass murders. I think I might give my proposal a more positive name rather than Terrorist Anonymous to deal with the reintegration of those who have been disillusioned with terrorism. I like the name self-definition. To me, it symbolizes the essence of the work to be done, the creation of a self that defines itself and doesn't look to groups to tell it who it is or what it should do. From the article, 10 Essential Points about the Marathon Bombers, Islam and America. Number 1. Those who know the suspects best say that this had nothing to do with being Chechen or with Islam. The suspect's uncle spoke with the national media. He also called his own nephews losers and stated that this atrocity had nothing to do with being Chechen or Islam. The two brothers do not exactly fit the model of pious Muslims. We don't know much about the two brothers, and all of us, myself included, and I'm quoting from the article, 10 Essential Points about the Marathon Bombers, Islam and America, myself included, are trying to piece together a narrative from the few pieces that we have available. The few pieces we have do not exactly add up to a life of pious observance of Islam. Their high school friends talk about the two brothers getting together, drinking and smoking pot. We are very much in the early stage of piecing evidence together. The few isolated quotes we have from the two brothers so far suggest that they were not particularly practicing before having a conversion experience connected to jihadist rhetoric associated with the Australian extremist, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his name. We have seen this before in the case of the 9/11 hijackers who visited strip clubs and got loaded up on alcohol and porn before committing their atrocities. Again, not the actions of Muslim role models. At this point, the path of wisdom is to wait for the legal process to uncover more actual facts about the lives of the two suspects. The picture painted is very much like the picture painted by Erich Fromm about the connection between being and destructiveness. The predicament of people of our time, Fromm said, is they no longer perceive themselves as a center of activity. Their will is sapped. They play no part in planning their work. They look for excitement instead of joy, for power instead of prosperity, instead of growth. They try to relieve their emptiness through ever-increasing consumption of things, drugs, alcohol, sex. They listen to what is common sense and public opinion instead of the stirrings of their own heart. To reintegrate the disillusioned terrorists into society, we have to help them to achieve the self-definition that prevents people from finding refuge in a group, to give meaning to their lives, something to believe in. We have to help the person to develop a solid sense of self, help the person to become inner-directed where an outer-directedness was, help the person find his or her place in society. We start that process by providing the needs they might have sought in a terrorist group, the need for connectedness. What we know about various therapeutic outcomes is that the most important factor is having a relationship with the healer. Alcohol Anonymous attains this by providing the alcoholic with a sponsor. The person, the terrorist we are trying to reintegrate into society has to relate to in that reintegration program, has to be someone they can relate to, someone who has a similarity of ethnic background or experience, someone who can make this person feel understood and respected, yet someone too who can be a guide helping that person to meet the needs they sought in joining a terrorist group and finding a place in society. Through dialogue, that person has to help the person they want to reintegrate into society begin a process of inner searching of what is really important to them, what needs or wants they were trying to satisfy in joining a terrorist group. I would use instruments, and I'm just, telling you this is to start a dialogue. It's not to say this is the way that we reintegrate terrorists. It is to say the Lindsey Grahams who say this is a war of religion, the researchers are saying are wrong. I want to get the talk on a different trajectory. So how would I do it? I'll give you my stupid way. I would use instruments like the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory, instruments like the Strong Interest Inventory, a Values Inventory. Over a period of time, through long discussions, a program of self-definition would seek to help the person to explore what they want from life, what they really care about, what their dreams are, their hopes for the future. I'm adding on my website, theamericanreformmovement.com, some things I've used in helping people come to self-definition. What I am proposing might sound naive to some, but that is only because I think they see disillusioned terrorists as terrorists, not as human beings who have many of the same desires and needs as we do. I subscribe to Erich Fromm's view that there is a being-destructiveness connection and that reclaiming our being is the antidote to destructiveness. I offer these ideas not as a solution, but as part of a dialogue on reintegrating disillusioned terrorists into society and what can serve as an antidote to destructiveness. Some of the things that I suggest that I have on my website is how to help people find balance in life, and there's ways to do this. How to help people to discover what their values are in life, and there's ways to do this. How to help people to decide what they want, what they need, who they are. I used these interview questions in talking to people who were lost. And terrorists, if you look at the research, these are people who are lost. Some of them answered the question, why did you become a terrorist, with, I don't know. This sounds like our alienated youth. I don't know what I want to be. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know who I am. Our society doesn't meet the existential needs of people. And the more authoritarian societies, those in the Islam world, the more this is so. And maybe that is why, from these authoritarian societies, we are seeing more destructiveness. Go to my website. I'll give you my ideas about how to help people start that process of inner searching. I think this is like the root cause. I'm not saying I've got the solution to how to deal with it, but the root cause, it's not like Lindsey Graham says, these people are so religious and it's our religion versus their religion and it's a war of religions. It's about human beings trying to get their existential needs met and not knowing how to do it and not getting a hell of a lot of guidance from our society.